All right. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom.
We're the Brothers of Great Millstone, Charlotte, coming at you again through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shem El Shai. First and foremost, before we get started, we'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Racha HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who taught us this truth and rule well. Peace and blessings unto the hopeful elect, pushing his word throughout the four corners of the earth in truth, righteousness, and sincerity. To you, we say Shalom.
Shalom.
So in this lesson, as I got entitled, Easter, a pagan holiday. We're gonna go into this holiday that just happened, that just passed this weekend. Um, Good Friday, as they say, Easter Sunday, Easter Saturday, Easter Monday, all these terms that they use, to that coincides with this wicked ass holiday. This idol worship is really what it goes back to. But pretty much go into the origins. I'm gonna get this article. I'm gonna pull it up real quick. But go into the origins of how they try to tie this up with the scriptures. Let me get this. All right, so this is from chefin.com. It says the pagan origins of Easter and different Easter foods from around the world. All right. So I'm just going to skip down, get straight to the point. So it says the pagan origins of Easter. While Christmas was a celebration of the winter solstice, Easter was a celebration of the spring equinox for the pagans. Right? Because when you go back into these like Christmas, right, Easter, a lot of these holidays, Valentine's Day, 4th of July, Thanksgiving, right? A lot of these holidays really go back to cycles of the sun, the moon, the stars, the what do you call it, the season changing, right? And really, the heathen will worship these things, right? The changes. That's what they will start worshiping, and then they'll celebrate it by committing all kinds of wicked acts. And with Easter, when you go into it, really goes back to them committing sexual, I guess you could say, sacrifices, right,
Con.
to serve their deity. You gonna say something, Mark?
Con was going to add to your point because you had mentioned that pretty much it goes off of it's pretty much going off of the sun, in which
Mm-hmm.
I got two for you, but this is
Mm-hmm.
Bon Sirach, Bon Sirach, chapter 43, and we will get verse 6. It says, He made the moon also to serve in her season for a declaration of times and the sign of the world. All right, and we understand that, the signs of heaven, all right, whether it's, going into the moon, the sun, the stars, all right, it's
Mm-hmm.
different signs, that the Lord essentially shows us, you see. But specifically, all right, the moon, all right, that's how we measure the time,
Mm-hmm.
because the years, the months, are and the days, are all of that time is off of the moon. All right. Whereas with this, they're going off of the sun. And I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna get one
Mm-hmm.
more, but this is Bon Sirach 43 and verse 6. It says, He made the sun also, the moon also to serve in her season for a decoration of times and a sign of the world. For the moon is a sign of feast. All right, the moon tells you, when the different holy days is a light that decreaseth in her perfection, because the perfection of the moon is going into the new moon, because that's when something is made renewed. That's when it's restored, another month. It says the
Mm-hmm.
month is called after her name, increasing wonderfully in her changing, being an instrument of the armies above, shining in the firmament of heaven. And ultimately, it said the month is called after her name. Moon comes from month, or the month is called, yeah, moon comes from month. In Dutch, I believe it's the same. I believe it's manad. What is it in Spanish? Uh,
Luna.
Luna, and then what is the month?
Oh, month. Mess.
Mes. Okay, well, it might
Mm-hmm.
be different in Spanish, but when you look at it on a linguistic perspective, it's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
languages. Just like when you go to German, when you go to I believe month, I believe that might be like Anglo Saxon or something like that. But really, when you look at moon again a linguistic perspective, a lot of different languages is going to show that hey, it comes from the word for month, just like Yarach.
Mm-hmm.
Yarach means moon, but then it also at certain cases in the scriptures it goes into month. All right, and then same
Mm-hmm.
thing for Chadash, that's the new moon, and also the same thing for the month. So the moon is specifically how we're supposed to measure the time. The reason why I wanted to bring that out is because the heathen have corrupted time. I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
get this too. This is Genesis chapter 8. Genesis chapter 8, and we'll get verse 22, and it says while the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. So it's 2 seasons. All right, Esau has corrupted to where he said it was 4 seasons, but really it's only two. You got summer and you got winter. Which summer, when you look at what they call it over in the so-called Fertile Crescent, they say the cold season, or excuse me, the wet season and the dry season. The wet
Mm-hmm.
season is during fall and winter, and then spring and summer are together. That's why in the scriptures it said that roughly paraphrasing, King David went out when the kings went to war. But nevertheless, the point is you got 2 seasons, and all of these are essentially the times are measured with the moon. But it's
Mm-hmm.
significant because, or it's relevant in this right here, because ultimately what Esau and the heathen have done, they got the 4 seasons, and then they got uh those are four different deities. They're
Mm-hmm.
pretty much four different deities, and then they pretty much do sacrifices with those, with the winter solstice, and the other one you brought out, or the spring equinox. They pretty much go to different idols. You know,
Mm-hmm. Con, hey, did you have another precept?
a lot of those were two.
Con, hey, I got something for you. You could break it down.
Okay.
This is Romans 1:25. It says, "Who changed the truth of the Most High into a lie, and worshipped and served the creature more than the Creator, who is blessed forever." Amen.
Right, and essentially what Esau has done, he has changed how the Lord established time, and
Mm-hmm.
used it for his own purpose. He's taken different creations, all right, and ultimately put them up above, the Lord. You know,
Mm-hmm.
because here it is, with this, he has people, worshiping fertility. All right, that's why
Mm-hmm.
he has the Easter bunny, and the really Easter goes back to Ishtar, because Ishtar is the idol of war, and then also of fertility.
Mm-hmm.
So really that's what the heathen have done. So they essentially have put up the creations and processes over the creator.
Mm-hmm. Con. Continuing on in this article, it
I could
says,
so I can read it, bro.
okay, con.
Says while Christmas was a celebration of the winter solstice, Easter was a celebration of the spring equinox for the pagans.
Mm-hmm.
Pagans lived their lives in strong accordance with nature's rhythms and patterns, pretty much, like we went into the processes and the creations. It
Mm-hmm.
says nature's rhythms and patterns, and solstices and equinoxes were considered to be sacred times. And if I can mention too,
Mm-hmm.
the solstices and the rhythms and the patterns and all that, so that really goes into what Esau calls astrology and astronomy and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it says were considered to be sacred times. A solstice marks the longest or shortest day of the year, while an equinox symbolizes the day when there is a balance between daylight and darkness. This
Right.
shows that.
So pretty much they used to worship these things, and a good example of this would be like the Stonehenge, right? To mark the winter solstice, right? And pretty much that they'll line it up. They'll pretty much put these stones up to where the sun was set right in the middle of these stones. And you can see this, with various pictures. I believe you mentioned it to me, Bawam, about how they'll take pictures like in New York City or some city,
Hmm.
and they'll have the sun just lining straight down that street to
Right.
where it pretty much looks like two pillars, and then the sun just setting right there.
That's yeah. They do that on purpose. Like that's why a lot of times they come out. You know, Esau bring his dudes out. You know, they come out with the little tripod looking thing, and then they'll look at the they look at the horizon, the landscape. They call them
Hmm.
surveyors. They blow. Oh, yeah, they're gonna
Right.
put an intersection right here. You know, like pretty much what you're going into is the Manhattan Hinge. Pretty much,
Mm.
Esau pretty much made it to where it directly aligns within two buildings, and that's because they use it for those types of purposes.
Right. Right. Con.
You want me to
You can
continue on?
continue on.
Okay.
Con.
It says this shows the end of one season and the beginning of another. So pretty much what they're saying is it went from one idol to the next. So it
Hmm.
says in the northern hemisphere, Easter falls in the spring equinox when winter is coming to an end and nature is experiencing a rebirth and renewal. This is naturally a cause for festivities and celebrations as the darkness comes. And if I can mention too, I know I keep pausing it, but
No, you good.
it says in the northern hemisphere, Easter falls in the spring equinox when winter is coming to an end and nature is experiencing a rebirth and renewal. And essentially, just as we're not supposed to mix, fabrics or mix, seed. Essentially, the heathen, they get a rise out of essentially doing things that are backwards. You see, because
Hmm.
winter doesn't bring in renewal. Spring ultimately, the new year and spring really is when things are renewed. You know,
Right. Hmm.
but it
That's
says,
whenever life comes back,
mm-hmm,
or so called. They say life comes back to the trees and to everything else. So yeah, it doesn't make no sense that winter brings in the what's it called, the renewal, rebirth. But you can go ahead.
God says, this is naturally a cause for festivities and celebrations as the darkness comes to an end and plants and leaves start to regrow after the cold winter. Well, yeah, that's what the article says. But pretty much going into what Esau calls the new year. He does even in that. He causes confusion. You see, because that's when things start to become new in the spring. You see, but then he got the new year being January. So he runs everything backwards.
Hmm. Con, hey, and can we get Jeremiah 10?
God, this is
We'll get this real quick before we move on.
Yaram Jeremiah chapter 10 and verse 1. It says, Hear ye the word which the Lord speaketh unto you, O house of Yasha'Allah.
Hmm.
Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven.
Right, the
For the
signs of heaven, right? What are some of those signs of heaven? Equinoxes, right? What was the other one? Uh
solstices,
Solstices, right? These are all signs of the heaven, right? And the heathen, that they'll worship these things. They'll be at all at seeing, the earth, or the cycle of how the earth's the process of dying and becoming renewal. They pretty much
mhm,
fell in love with that. You know what I'm saying? So they started worshiping it, creating deities off of it, as we see now.
right, and that's
Easter is one of them.
right, and that's essentially again like you brought out Romans 1 and I think it was verse 25. To where they
Hmm.
put the creation of the creator. You see, because they even got processes to where back in the day, Gad was worshiping. When Gad was going off, they was worshiping the cycle of how the Lord made it rain. They would say, "Oh, this is a
Hmm.
a so-called rain god." You see, but that's not in the truth. It's
Right.
not. We're not supposed to do that.
Right. They even had what they call it, a rain dance.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking about Gad, but that's another topic. But you can go ahead. You can continue
Con,
reading. Read down to verse 3, Baba Kushar.
This is Jeremiah 10 and verse 2. In the latter, it says, "For the heathen are dismayed at them, for the customs of the people are vain. For one cutteth a tree out of the forest, the work of the hands of the workman with the axe."
So that's just going into Christmas, right? What you now know to be Christmas, But again, just going back to the point, all these holidays, they all go back to some type of idol, right? Because ultimately, the true, I guess you could say, whole high holy days really is that of the scriptures, that of the Bible. These things of Easter and all these things, they added it into it. Like Easter is not even the real word for what these Christians think that they're celebrating. The real word should be the Passover, right? Or Passover, not Easter, right? And we'll go back to this article. We'll read some of this. And Baba Kushak, can you hold Acts 12 and 4?
Con, you want me to get it or just have it on deck?
I have it on deck. I want to read this first. Going into the how Easter was adopted into Christianity. I'll read this, and Baba Kushak, if you can, you can get that Acts 12.
Con,
But it says around mid 300 AD, Christianity was increasing in popularity in Rome, then the center of the world. In 312, the Emperor Constantine converted to Christianity and put an end to the ongoing persecution of Christians. However, he knew that Salakia. However, he knew that just because he had converted, it didn't mean that pagans would stop following the rituals and traditions. So he slowly started to adopt existing pagan rituals into Christian festivities. And when you go into the history of this, really, he didn't just add festivities; he added idols into he mixed idol or idolatry into Christianity, or into the back then was known as well, I believe it was known as Christianity, but he was mixing idol worship into the scriptures, right? So this is where all these things stems from. But and even the worship of Mary, the Queen of Heaven, all these things go back to Constantine. But it says in 325 AD, the church council, known as the Council of Nicaea, it says first decided that Easter's celebration should fall on the Sunday after the first full moon of the spring equinox. And thus Easter Sunday was born, and symbols associated with nature's rebirth and renewal came to be associated with the rebirth or resurrection of Hamashiach. Right, so that's what they're saying, right? They're tying it up with our Lord Yahweh Shah, but ultimately this all goes back to a whole different pagan tradition, pagan worship, right? Pagan holy holiday, right? So can we get that Acts 12 and 4?
Con, this is Acts chapter 12 and verse 4. It says, and when he had apprehended him, he put him in prison and delivered him to 4 quaternions of soldiers to keep him, intending after Easter to bring him forth to the people.
Mm-hmm. So when you go into that word Easter, it doesn't really it doesn't mean Easter, the Easter that you and I know. It goes into the Passover. And Baba Kushad, do you mind going into that word?
Con, this is 1 Kings chapter 11, and we'll get verse 31. And it says, and he said to Jeroboam, take thee 10 pieces, for thus saith the Lord, the power of Israel, behold, I will rend the kingdom out of the hand of Solomon, and will give 10 tribes to thee. But he shall have 1 tribe for my servant David's sake, and for Jerusalem's sake, the city which I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel, because they have forsaken me and have worshipped Ashtaroth, the goddess of the Zidonians, Chamash, the god of the Moabites, and Milcom, the god of the children of Ammon, and have not walked in my ways to do that which is right in mine eyes, and to keep my statutes and my judgments, as did David his father. And ultimately, that's Jake's thing every time. That's Jake's kryptonite. Essentially Jake will start following those idols. But the word I wanted to get was Ashtoreth.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is throughout the process of time, what the heathen do is they'll take, just like we see right here, they'll take a certain group of letters or what have you, and they'll change those specific letters into another name. So, for example, with the term for hero, the 2 letters is H and R, but really that goes back to an Egyptian deity. Just like right here, Ashtoreth, Easter, the same sound, the STR, that goes back to the idol Ishtar. But I'm gonna read into the word for Ishtar. It says, it says I Shatarat, and it says star, which really would be as well as Ashatar or Asatar, but it says the
Mm,
principal female deity of the Phoenicians worshipped in war and fertility, in which we'll get that article as well. But I believe we have an article queued up for how Ukraine. They was like, yeah, they called a ceasefire, but it was like, nah, fuck it, we can go back to war. That's
right.
essentially because Esau's throwing up those different enchantments, and they in that spirit of they in the spirit of Ishtar. But it says the
Mm,
principal female deity of the Phoenicians worshipped in war and fertility. That's why when they got the bunny. Bunnies don't lay eggs. But they put the
mm,
eggs for the idol Ishtar. You see, because eggs represent. Females have eggs. So they represent fertility. That's pretty
mm,
much them. That Queen of Heaven worship.
right.
But it says also Ishtar of Assyria and Astarte by Greeks and Romans. So pretty much what happens is, again, the heathen they pretty much keep the same group of letters a lot of times, and they'll change it into another name. All right, and pretty much they'll tweak the tradition, so to speak. You see, but when you
Mm,
really go down to the ground of it, it really just goes back to the same idol. you know
right.
but continuing on, it says
They pretty
it
much
says
repackage it.
yeah, repackage it. Yep. It says Ishtar or Ashtoreth, the Phoenician goddess of love and increase. The increase going back to the eggs, and the love
Mm,
pretty much again going into to the fertility. But it says, going to the Strongs, it says Ishtar of a female idol worshipped by the Phoenicians, sometimes also by the Hebrews. When Jake was going off, it says with great honor together with Baal, because pretty much they have a link in how the heathen would go after them. But we understand that. Let me get this too if I can.
yeah.
Zada Baryam, this is Deuteronomy chapter 32 and verse 17. It says, verse 16, verse 15. It says, but Yasharwan waxed fat and kicked, thou art waxing fat. Because Jake, every time, Jake get into to rulership, Jake get comfortable and then start going off.
Mm,
It says,
mm,
thou art grown thick, thou art covered with fatness. Then he forsook the power which made him and lightly esteemed the rock of his salvation. That's what happens every time. Jacob, get into that comfortable state, and then, don't Jake don't show that loyalty.
right.
But it says, they provoke him to jealousy with strange gods, with abominations provoke they him to anger. They sacrifice unto devils, not to the Most High, to whom powers they knew not, to new gods that came newly up, whom your fathers feared not. New gods that came newly up. You see, because each time and each different time period, these idols is essentially again repackaged. So right here it says
Mm,
devils. It says shad, which really that word shad goes into demon. So really, all those idols are just demons. It
mm,
says this is the word for shad. It says shad only in plural, shad yam. It says lords compared to Baaliam from the root shawad to rule, whence lord lowercase g, or excuse me, lowercase l, master, Saraic, demon, since the Jews rightly regarded idols to be demons whom allowed themselves to be worshipped by men. And that's essentially what Easter is, what these different solstices, all these different things are just ascribed to different deities, you see, but we're not instructed to follow after those ways, you see, because ultimately in the end of those different ways and ideologies is death.
mm. Khan, hey, and you mentioned, that war, right? In Russia versus Ukraine. I got it pulled up right here. Pretty much says Russia and Ukraine accuse each other of violating Easter ceasefire. So apparently they had a ceasefire, like you mentioned, but hey, it all went to shit, right? Like they took on that vibration of Ishtar, man.
Yeah, in that Easter spirit.
Right, that Easter spirit, that true Easter spirit, right? But let me go back. Well, as a matter of fact, well, yeah, let me go back. Let me go back. Let me see what more I can get from this article on the origin of Easter. It says, where does Easter gets its name from?
I can
It
read it if you
says,
want me
Con, you can read it.
to. It says in most of Europe, the Easter celebration gets its name from the Jewish festival of Passover, Pasach, which
Mm-hmm.
occurs at a similar time to the spring equinox. So in Greece, Easter is called Pasach. In Italy, it is called Pasqua. In France, it is called Pakes, which, excuse me, for Greece, I believe that would be Pascha or something like that. But it says
Mm-hmm.
in Denmark, it is Paesk, Paske. But
Mm-hmm.
in Germany and English-speaking countries like England, Easter took its name from the pagan goddess uh, Eostre, which that would be Ishtar, the
Mm-hmm.
goddess of spring and fertility.
Yep. Yeah, he's going back to like you mentioned, all these idols, ancient deities, they're all pretty much repackaged, right? The goddess Eostri, Eostri, and I looked into this, and it goes back to some kind of Celtic uh, goddess or some shit. But like you mentioned, this all really goes back to Ishtar, right? Or what's the other goddess? Diana.
Yep, because they had back in the ancient world, the
Hmm.
heathen had, what they call the so-called wonders of the world. They had, I believe, the
Hmm.
pyramids. They had the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, and then they had the statue. Going back to, I'm gonna get. You mind if I get that?
Khan, I don't mind. Go ahead.
This is Acts chapter 19, and this was in Ephesus, but this
Hmm.
is Acts 19 and verse 24. It says, "For a certain man named Demetrius, a silversmith, made silver shrines for Diana, bought no small gain unto the craftsmen." Let me skip down. I'll read down. It
Hmm.
says, "Whom he called together with the workmen of like occupation, and said, Sirs, ye know that by this craft we have our wealth." And essentially, the heathen, they ultimately get money off of these different idols. Just like with Jake that subscribed to that lifestyle as well. The different so-called churches. During this
Hmm.
what they call the Resurrection Sunday or whatever. Jake going there. And they best dress suit. The pastors and stuff like that. They had little dinners. They making a killing. Best believe they
Hmm.
making a killing off these different little holidays. But it says, "Whom we called together with the workmen of like occupation, and said, Sirs, ye know that by this craft we have our wealth. Moreover, ye see and hear that not alone at Ephesus, but almost throughout all Asia, this Paul hath persuaded and turned away much people, saying that they be no gods which are made with hands." And that's really these things are made with hands.
Hmm.
The Buddha statue, all right, the cobblestone, all of these things are made, with hands, pursuant to Isaiah the 44th chapter. But it
Hmm.
says, which are made with hands, Acts 19 and 26 in the latter. It says, verse 27, "So that not only this our craft is in danger to be set at naught, but also the temple of the great goddess Diana should be despised, and her magnificence should be destroyed, whom all Asia and the world worshipeth." And that's essentially where we at now, to where this truth is exposing all of that stuff. So that's why Esau's coming with his his smear campaign, and trying
Hmm.
to muffle or censor this truth. But it's not going to work. Because the scriptures say that the knowledge of the glory of the Lord shall cover the earth as it does the sea, roughly paraphrasing. But it says,
Hmm.
verse 28, it says, "And when they heard these sayings, they were full of wrath and cried out, saying, Great is Diana of the Ephesians." All right, and when we go into this word for Diana, because again, the heathen, they just change up, the names. It says Artemis, because I believe the either the Greeks or the Greeks or it was the Greeks. It says Artemis. That is to say, so called Tariq. Tariq goes back to Tariq is goes back to Taurus, that bull. Pretty much, and that's
Hmm.
why pretty much they tied together, both Baal and Ishtar, because they used to worship the bull as well. But it says, or
Hmm.
Persian or Ephesian Artemis, the goddess of many Asiatic people, to be distinguished from the Artemis of the Greeks, the sister of Apollo. A very splendid temple was built to her at Ephesus, which was set on fire by Herostratus and reduced to ashes. But afterwards, in the times of Alexander the Great, the Greek, it was built in a style of greater magnificence. So pretty much what the heathen would do is build shrines and temples and stuff like that, because ultimately, the heathen don't have a power. We have
Mm-hmm.
a power, and our power is alive. The heathen
Mm-hmm.
don't have anything to worship, so they take different things and try to repackage them. All right, and that puts a certain vibration on them, which we're not supposed to have that vibration on us, pursuant to Jeremiah 10 and verses 1 to 3.
Mm-hmm. Con. So pretty much, like the brother mentioned, a lot of these heathen, seeing that they're just mere mortals, that they took on a lot of what they saw and what they witnessed as far as the creation of the Most High, and they took it on and started to worship it. You know, and Lord willing, us, we be part of the elect, part of those few spirits that created everything. You know, and seeing that we were, Lord willing, we be part of those first
First
Salakia,
fruits.
first fruits, right? you know, the Most High has allowed us to return back to that, that understanding of who He is, how everything is supposed to actually work, and not be caught with by these pretty much strongholds, because that's pretty much what these are. These different idols and things, different celebrations, are really strongholds that has, captivated our people for a long period of time, and now we're waking up from it, right? But Jake, you see 2/3 of Jake still caught up in this thing, man. Like still heavily, like when I was at work, Jake is looking forward to, going out the Easter egg hunt, talking about taking their kids out, going Easter egg hunting, going to church, doing this and that. The same bullshit that I'm pretty sure, I used to do that shit when I was back in the world. What I'm saying? When I was a kid, when going out Easter egg hunting. But hey, all that shit, come to find out, all that shit was nothing but wickedness, man. All tied up with this bullshit, man. Easter, what's it called? Asterisk, right? The Queen of Heaven, nothing but idol worship.
I got
Uh,
a so
You got a precept, Khan? Go ahead, bring it
yeah, I
out.
got a precept in a Google search, but you finish your point.
Khan, now I just want to bring out a precept. This is First Chronicles 16:26. It says, for all the gods of the people are idols, but Yahweh made the heavens." You see, so all the idols from the past, all the ancient idols, ancient deities, all that was nothing but idols. And when you go into that word idol, it means useless, right? Worthless, because ultimately they can't do anything. They can't do good and they can't do evil, right? Pretty much the heathen are worshiping those idols in vain. And even Jake, that partakes in this, y'all worshiping all that in vain. Really, all y'all doing is making the Most High mad, right? Which is why you see a lot of shit be happening whenever Jake gets together and tries to celebrate all these various holidays. But you go ahead, bro. You go ahead and make your point, bro.
Because they had mentioned we had gotten Acts I believe it was the 19th chapter, but pretty much they said that by this craft we have our wealth. So the
Mm-hmm.
scriptures say that the Lord speaks in similitudes. So that was a similitude of what's going on today. You see, it's the same thing. It's just
Mm-hmm.
repackaged, but it says in 2025, Americans are expected to spend a near record 23.6 billion on Easter. This includes spending on items like food, gifts, candy, clothing, and decorations. The average person is expected to spend around $189.26 on Easter related items. It says, this is an article, and it says from talkbusiness.net, it says Easter spending expected to total 23.6 billion, up 5%. The National Retail Federation expects a 5% rise in Easter holiday spending compared with 2024. Total spending is forecast at 23.6 billion despite economic uncertainty evidenced by weaker consumer confidence and sluggish retail sales. So just wanted to get that, you see, because it's the same thing. They essentially just they making money off of Jake, even though Jake don't got the money to even spend. you know.
Right.
But this is
Right.
Isaiah 44 and verse uh 18. I start verse 17. It says, hold on. 17. Isaiah 44 and 17, it says, "In the residue thereof he maketh a God, even his graven image. He falleth down there, he falleth down unto it, and worshipeth it, and prayeth unto it, and saith, Deliver me, thou art my power." And that's essentially, what's going to be said to two-third of Jake.
Mm-hmm.
Ask the powers, pursuant to Judges the 10th chapter. Ask the idols, that you essentially confided in. You see, because Jake is so head over heels, for these different deities. But it says,
Mm-hmm.
"They have not known nor understood, for he hath shut their eyes that they cannot see, and their hearts that they cannot understand." Which, the deceived and the deceiver are his, because ultimately, the Lord deceives those that he deceives for his particular purposes. But it says, "And none considereth in his heart, neither is there knowledge nor understanding to say, I have burned part of it in the fire, yet also I have baked bread upon the coals thereof. I have roasted flesh and eaten it, and shall I make the residue thereof an abomination? Shall I fall down to the stock of a tree?" And nobody ultimately considers that, because these things are just, made of, trees and, whatever else they use. But it
Mm-hmm.
says, "He feedeth on ashes. A deceived heart hath turned him aside, that he cannot deliver his soul, nor say, Is there not a lie in my right hand?" And your right hand is something that you rely on. That's something that you confide in. That's your strength. Your right hand represents your strength. So ultimately, these people are, their strength, all right, goes back to a lie. That they're ultimately entrusting, and they're confiding in false senses of security. Nothing that's going to deliver them, and that's ultimately why they're of no benefit and of no avail.
Right. Con. I got precept. This is Isaiah 19:3, and it says, "And the spirit of Egypt shall fail in the midst thereof, and I will destroy the counsel thereof." Right, because as you see, the council that Donald J. Trump and even the previous, uh, presidency, his cabinet, you know, a lot of the council that they suggested, a lot of the things that they did while they were in office, it was really to the detriment of the American people. Even with Donald Trump right now in office, we're seeing a lot of his council members, a lot of his advisors, they're giving him bad advice. They're giving him bad counseling, man. They're pretty much fools. A lot of them. Well, actually, this just happened recently. How they leaked a certain information about certain wars or whatever through some type of text message or social media accounts. But that just shows you the type of council and administration that's in office right now, right? So the public, the people, they're pretty much fed up with all the what's going on, the charade that Trump is putting out there, right? But it says, continuing on, it says, "And I will destroy the counsel thereof," as we see the counsel is being destroyed. Esau's counsel is being, eradicated. Like the scriptures say, is there any more wisdom in Teman? Right? We're seeing that their wisdom is failing. Their counsel isn't what it used to be. But it says, "And they shall seek to the idols and to the charmers and to them that have familiar spirits and to the wizards." And that starts from the top, right? That starts from the top. You have MAGA, right, going back to Magi, right? That's pretty much Trump's council right now, right? They're delving into the charmers, the sorcerers, their idols, right? But what does the scripture say? As the leader, as the ruler is, so is the people. So now you see the people even being in that base state as well. You know, having to lean into witchcraft, having to lean into, going back to tapping into these ancient idols, man. Right. And just to add to that point, I got this article right here pulled up going into it says a list. So sorry, Salakia. It says, "What stores, restaurants will close for Easter 2025. Right. So there's a whole list, of stores, restaurants that closed up, and all to celebrate things. Salakia Thanksgiving. It just popped up in front of my face. I just read it, but all to celebrate Easter, right? Why is that? It's to get everybody back into that spirit of into that Ishtar type spirit, man. Right? But here's a list. You got Aldi, Best Buy, Costco, Dick's Sporting Goods, Hobby Lobby, Home Goods, Home Sense, Kohl's, Lowe's, Macy's, Marshalls, Sam's Club, Sierra, Target, TJ Maxx, all these restaurants, Chick-fil-A, Chipotle, In-N-Out, Raising Cane's. But the point being is that all these places shut down, and it's really you can see it from a mile away. They're trying to get that spirit. They're trying to use that Ishtar spirit to bring fertility back into America, right? So it can help aid their ventures or whatever it is that they got going for them, right? Because a
Right.
lot of things was going on throughout this whole Easter, right? Like we mentioned the Russia Ukraine thing, right? They tried to do a ceasefire. It didn't work well because that Ishtar spirit, man, war. Now you had also this right here. I'm just pull it up real quick. Um, After Pope Francis's death, debates began over his successor. But pretty much that devil called Pope Francis, he's dead. No, he died. Was it Monday? I believe, April 21st. So he died that day. Again, what they call it, Easter Monday. And then another one. Something else that happened was the World Economic Forum. These people that are in charge of the New World Order. The leader Klaus Schwab. Apparently, he resigned. He pretty much took a step back from running that WEF forum, right? So there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that Esau, is cooking up or is continuing to push forward as far as his agenda for the NWO. But this Easter, it wasn't just this Easter celebration isn't just some as people might think, innocent, you know, celebration of our Lord Yahweh Shai, whom they call Jesus Christ. It really all goes back to some other type of worship, man. And all these people took part in putting that vibration out there, you know. But
Con, if I could add too,
Khan,
going into Isaiah 19:3, it says, "And the spirit of Egypt shall fail in the midst thereof, and I will destroy the counsel thereof. And they shall seek to the idols and to the charmers, and to them that have familiar spirits, and to the wizards." And pretty much tying that into Isaiah the 24th chapter. Pretty much that the mirth of the land is gone. So reason why
mm-hmm,
they're trying to do these things is to revamp, what once was. They want to
mm-hmm,
get, that revenue. They want to get the people their minds into, or they want to keep people asleep pretty much. And
right,
they did the thing to where they was like, oh well, this store is going to be closed, that store is going to be closed, which that does a couple things for Esau. That essentially makes it seem as if he's being communicative with the people, so that
mm-hmm,
allows the people to be rocked back to sleep. You see, but then also that's tying into famine, because
mm-hmm,
Target closed their stores, like 3 times in the last
mm-hmm,
like 2 months, 3 months, so that's really steadily telling the people that, hey, they don't got as much supplies as they once used to, you know,
mm-hmm,
because it's still things like you said, brewing in the background. I read an
mm-hmm,
article a couple of days ago or the other day, and it said every 30 minutes in DC, every 30 minutes, somebody's being treated for a gunshot wound. So as these things are happening, you still got famine, you still got people suffering from homelessness, crime going up,
mm-hmm,
but Esau is trying to bring back, he's trying to consult with the idols, the charmers, and familiar spirits, and with the wizards, roughly paraphrasing. You see,
mm-hmm,
which all of that, has a short time to where it's going to be that witchcraft ain't gonna work. It's not working as it once used to, and
Mm-hmm.
ultimately, that's not gonna deliver them. I got this real fast.
Mm-hmm.
This is Bon Sirach, Bon Sirach chapter, I believe it's 19 and let's see, might be 20. It's Bon Sirach 20 and verse 19. You know where it says the knowledge of wickedness is not wisdom.
Oh yeah, yeah. Um, it should be in Bouncer Rock. Hold on.
Um, it's a lot.
Sirach,
19 and 22.
1922.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Bon Sirach 19 and 22, it says, the knowledge of wickedness is not wisdom, neither at any time the counsel of sinners prudence. You see, because ultimately the scriptures say that, the city will be inhabited, through wisdom. That's
Mm-hmm.
essentially how it's going to be ran. You see, but what Esau is doing is he's ruling in wickedness. You know,
Mm-hmm.
he's ruling again. Everything in wickedness, and ultimately, it ain't gonna have any type of benefit. I got this too. This is Ayawab Job 20 and verse 5. You see, because that wickedness is only gonna work for a limited amount of time. He has bounds that he can't pass.
Mm-hmm.
Going into his rulership, and then also the amount of power that he got. But this is Job 20 and 5. It says the triumphing of the wicked is short. Because it seemed like Esau winning. Or to those without understanding. Because right now he's on his he's on that downward slope.
Mm-hmm.
But it says the triumphing of the wicked is short, and the joy of the hypocrite but for a moment. It's only for a moment. And when we get this word for a moment, it says ragai. Reason I want to bring this because it says a wink of the eye. You know how fast it says H7281. It says a moment. It says for a moment. It says at another moment. It says suddenly, instant, moment, space, a very short space of time. So
Mm-hmm.
it says root word etymology ragai from a wink of the eyes, i.e., a very short space of time. So it only takes a couple milliseconds to just blink. So that's how much the triumphant he gonna get. That's the amount of time. Going back to Job 20 and verse 5, it says the joy of the hypocrite, but for a moment. That pretty excuse me, uh pretty much going into that wink is going into the joy. He's only gonna have a short amount of time to where what he was doing, the
Mm-hmm.
wickedness, where he's gonna be happy, where he's gonna be elated. That's gonna be for a short amount of time.
Right. Hey, I beheld Satan far from heaven as lightning.
Hmm.
Right. So as lightning, like you mentioned, like a blink of an eye, just real. It's gonna be quick. He's gonna be up there. He's gonna attain, that heaven, but it's gonna be like very very short. He's not gonna be able to enjoy it, as it says in the book of Job. That in the fullness of his sufficiency, he shall be in straits. Right, and that's what we're seeing. Esau come into a state of pretty much adversity of everything that he does just being a mistake, and him paying for those mistakes. Everything just being made narrow for him. At first his path was wide and broad. When World War II, after World War II, his path was broad, but now we're starting to see everything start to bottleneck for him, to where nothing's working. He's gonna have to tap. He's tapping back into, Easter again. You know, Here it is. I thought that he done forgot about this shit, and now all of a sudden he brings it back, tries to bring it back. Bigger, right? Just closing down stores, closing down this. You know what I'm saying? Like, and not even that. Like, the people don't even got the money to afford this. Like,
Hmm.
people can't, like, even though they close down all these stores, and like you mentioned, that's a sign of famine as well. But even then, people can't really even celebrate Easter, or people didn't even celebrate Easter like that. They might have gotten a couple of like eggs for the kid, for the children, and all this bullshit. But they're really, the people don't got the money, don't got the funding to be able to celebrate it and go all out like they used to back 20, 15 years ago. Things are getting more and more tighter. People ain't trying to celebrate these holidays no more. So this whole thing was like this whole publicity stunt that Esau did really was a failure.
I got something for you real fast. It says,
Um,
what percentage of the U.S. is homeless? And this is a estimation, because they're not really going to say the amount of people. But it says in
right.
2024, 771,480 people in the U.S. experienced homelessness, representing about 1/4 of the total U.S. population. This marked an 18% increase from 2023, and we in 2025, by the way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Telling you, man, and it's just gonna get worse. Like you had
Mhm.
tent cities all over America, and it's just building up even more and more. Like even over here where I'm at, like it's a small town, and you're already starting to see homeless people. Shit's crazy, man. Like you have major cities that's filled with homeless people, but smaller cities are starting to get filled up with homeless people. That just shows you the state that America's heading to. Like there's no jobs. Like job market is getting cut short. You know, people are talking about that we are already in a recession. I just made a video just earlier today going into the second Great Depression. That's pretty much where we're at right now, right? The times where the first Great Depression was, this second Great Depression is going to be far worse than what the first one was, man. But because you got certain elements, you have a lot of elements that's taking place here in America, like war, various wars. You have um, drug epidemics. You have a cost of living crisis. You have this whole thing with the AI taking over people's positions or threatening to take over people's positions in the workforce or whatnot. It's a lot of things that changes the effect as far as the recession and an inflation. You know, this time is going to be a lot worse to where people ain't going to be able to eat. And this whole thing with celebrating, and they keep on pushing this in your face too. Celebrating, like last year was Christmas. You got to celebrate Christmas, but then they're talking about how things are going to cost even more. Even now, you have the tariffs going on. Man, Jake don't know what they're getting into, man. Like this, like you mentioned, this is all just a distraction to lull people back to sleep. To get
Right.
people comfortable again, instead of focusing on the weightier matters, right? How you gonna put food on the table 5 months from now? How you gonna pay your bills? How you gonna live a couple months from now? Again,
Because
distraction on top of distraction, man. Esau playing off them enchantments.
right, because Jake is too busy, trying to keep up, with the Joneses. Like
Hmm.
they're more so worried about their self image. But I got this for you real fast. This is Isaiah 60 and verse 1. It says, "Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. For behold, the darkness shall cover the earth, and gross darkness the people.
Hmm.
But the Lord shall arise upon thee, and his glory shall be seen upon thee."
Right, gross darkness to people, man. Hey, you can see the people, man. They're in gross darkness, man. People ain't concerned with what the hell is going on around them. Like, and that really like baffles me. The fact that all this shit that you see on the news is it's not even like it's not a space or a gap to let you know, or that gives you some good news in the middle of it. No, it's constant bad news after bad news after bad news. That just shows you the type of willful ignorance that the people are in, especially the tribes, man. Like the type of faith that Jake has for America is insane. Like if they would have that type of faith for the Most High, what I'm saying, we'll be out of here. We'll already be in the kingdom by now. But seeing that they have faith for Esau, for America, it's just ridiculous, man. But that just shows you these are the same people back in the ancient times that didn't want Yahushua to be king, right? They wanted Esau to remain king, right? Which is why they do what they do, man. They're part of this world. But I got a quick one. This is Isaiah 47:12. It says, speaking to Esau, it says, "Stand now with thine enchantments and with the multitude of thy sorceries, wherein thou hast labored from thy youth. If so be thou shalt be able to profit, if so be thou mayest prevail." Right, and that's exactly what Esau's doing, man. He's tapping into his bag of tricks, man. His idol worship, his enchantments, his sorceries, right? But it says, "Thou art wearied in the multitude of thy counsels. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, the monthly prognosticators stand up and save thee from these things that shall come upon thee." Right? Because ultimately, what is Esau scared of? Losing his kingdom, right? Uh, what the prophets been prophesying for 30, 40 plus years, man. His fall, his inevitable fall, the destruction of America, you know, and we're seeing him, barely hanging by a couple of strands, a couple of strings, holding his kingdom afloat, right? But like you mentioned, bro, all these things as soon as it's gonna come to an end, because these things ain't gonna hold up much longer, man. He's doing what he can. He's still being able to do what he can with what he's got. But like you quoted earlier, that he has bounds that he cannot pass, right? And we're reaching those bounds. That time limit. That time limit is getting cut. Is we get every day we're getting closer and closer to his fall, and he knows this. You know, but do you have anything else?
Bah.
I'm just gonna finish this out, reading this article, and I'll just get a precept and that'll be it. But this is it says Easter symbolism and foods. Now that we come to understand Easter's original nature as a celebration of spring, the symbolism starts to slowly make sense. Let's take a closer look at where Easter symbolism came from. It says, where did Easter eggs come from? Eggs are a symbol of new life and rebirth, just as nature returns to life after the cold of winter, or Yahushua is resurrected after the crucifixion. Decorating the decorating and eating eggs on Easter first became a custom during the Middle Ages, when people would decorate and eat hard-boiled eggs following Easter Sunday Mass after fasting throughout Lent. This ritual is still popular in many Eastern European countries, where you'll find families hand painting and eating actual non-chocolate eggs on Easter. Again, all going back to idol worship, right? Going back to that idol, what was it?
Ishtar.
Uh, Ishtar, but pretty much this one right here, which this goes back to Ishtar too, but this on this with this idol, pretty much they incorporated the rabbit and the eggs. But it says, why is Easter associated with the rabbit? Now the eggs may make sense, but how did the rabbit come into all of this? This symbolism can be especially strange when you consider the fact that rabbits don't even lay eggs, but it all ties back to the concept of fertility, rebirth, and renewal as celebrated by the pagans. The sacred symbol of the goddess Eostri was a hare, and the rabbits have long been considered a symbol of fertility due to their ability to reproduce quickly and in large numbers. Right? Again, just tying it all together, man. This all goes back to idol worship, man. Right? So all you that celebrated Easter, y'all celebrated an idol. Y'all didn't celebrate the rebirth or the resurrection of our Lord Yahushua. Y'all celebrated Ishtar. All right. Which is why I'm gonna read this real quick. Amos 5:21. It says, I hate I despise your feast days and would not smell your solemn assemblies. You see, and and why the Most High say this? Because y'all Jakes ain't celebrating. Like, even though y'all might think y'all celebrating, you know, something innocent, like I said, something that's, biblical. Y'all ain't. Pretty much Jake. Y'all gotta tap into the truth, man. Y'all gotta tap into the prophets. Read y'all's Bible, man. That's a problem with Jake. Jake just takes things for face value. They'll listen to this guy standing up on top of the podium wearing a suit, and they already automatically believe what he says, man, without them doing the research and doing the reading and doing the background. Jake gets caught up with the gimmicks, with the phylacteries, with all that I guess you could say, all that honey and all that sweetness, that they don't care to look twice at what really is the origin of these things that y'all celebrate. Which is why the Most High ain't dealing with some of y'all, man. But that's pretty much it, man. That's all I had. You have anything else, Ak?
Allah.
Con. So, with that, that was pretty much the origin of Easter. This is what Easter goes back to. Again, it's an idol. Goes back to idol worship, idolatry, right? Which is against the scriptures, against what the Most High, what is pretty much what He intended, right? So that's pretty much it. With that, we can go ahead and close it out by giving all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Racha Kodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who taught us this truth and rule well. Peace and blessings to the hopeful elect pushing His word throughout the four corners of the earth in truth, righteousness, and sincerity. Until the next time, we're going to say Shalom.
Shalom.
Kwam Yasher Allah.
Kwame Allah.